evening. Welcome to a new episode of our program, The World Today. And I'm Yasmin Bakir. I'll be joining you with my guest here in studio to analyze and take a look at the important banners on both the national and international newspapers for the past 24 hours. Very much delighted to have joining me here in the studio for this early evening, Mr. Mahmoud Thabet, political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Allow us to start with Al-Ahram Online. We're going to be reading an article regarding the polls in the second stage runoff. Close paves way for Egypt's 2015 parliament. The ballot counting process started on Wednesday evening following the end of the runoff in the second stage of Egypt's parliamentary elections. We do know that there are some primary figures coming up on who are going to be the front winners. There are 426 candidates, individual candidates, competing over 213 seats. I think by now, as an analyst, you do have a vision or a preview of what the next parliament or the first session of the upcoming parliament is going to look like.
Yes, no, we do. There's a lot of independents that are coming in. Interestingly, a lot of the former political parties that were essentially religious-based have not had any real traction this time around. On the contrary, we seem to be having a sort of rather economically liberal sort of right of center, if one could put it that way, type of government that seems to be coming in. And actually very much par for the course in the sense that Egypt's ideology at this time is to find solutions. It's an ideology, a political philosophy of finding solutions to its problems at this time. So it's more of a pragmatic kind of government, and that's what we're looking at.
Yes, as a political analyst as well, Mr. Thabet, what do you think should be the priority list of the upcoming parliament? We have so many difficulties, problems in the country, in basically all sectors and fields, of course, stopping them corruption. If you were to prioritize and shape, pragmatically into what should come first in your vision?
I think the primary mission of the new parliament will be stability. And not just stability, but all those factors that create stability. By which I mean we have, I don't know, I think it's something like 400 decrees that have to either be rendered into law or discarded, which have been done just in the last few years. Yes. In addition to which, there are many other decrees that were done in the Mubarak regime that were never ratified. So I think that some sort of legal, there's going to be a lot of legal work to determine which laws should be put on the books, which ones are no longer necessary.
Yeah, do you believe that the laws or the amendments of the laws should come first, or working on the problems to see what kind of amendments should be done? I mean,
well,
which
both,
way around? Because always
both.
Here in Egypt, we like to work or beat around the bush and work, vice versa.
No, we don't have time for that anymore. We run out of time, frankly. They have their work cut out for them. They have to get on with it. It has to be done simultaneously, render into code what laws are on the books, and more importantly, to ensure that the law is applied. It's very important the law is applied.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
applied in things like, for example, commercial disputes between companies, between individuals, or for commercial reasons. It's taking far too long. That has to be, and that's part of the stability, actually.
Yes, of course. Let's go to another article, more of an economic story on the Daily Star. Egypt's signals currency shift with payment of foreign dues. And the article, Mr. Thabet, goes on talking about Egypt's new central bank governor, who is Tariq Amer, and he sought to restore the investor confidence battered by 5 years of political unrest by paying foreign investors the money owed to them in the aftermath of the 2011 uprising. The central bank did say on Tuesday that it had paid $547.2 million, clearing the backing of the funds that it hadn't allowed sellers of stocks and bonds to convert it into foreign exchange earlier. There have been a lot of talks about the central bank and what role the central bank should have been playing in the past 2 years, and how had the central bank and its policy affected negatively or directly affected negatively or positively the Egyptian economy. How do you see the decision of this new governor to actually decide to pay millions of dollars back to the investors or to the money that they own it? Is this a positive step now with this critical stage that we're in?
Absolutely. Egypt has to get back its creditworthiness abroad, and that can only be done using foreign currency. The Egyptian currency is not really, it's semi-convertible, it's not fully convertible. So yes, using dollars. I personally actually think that the restrictions on dollars coming in and out of Egypt should not really be imposed, because that also corrodes the idea of,
but there were
trust.
reasons why
yes,
this
short-term reasons, but not long-term.
Yes.
In the long term, all you do is basically you take away confidence in Egypt being an area where you can invest in. Because if you invest here, you can't take your profits away.
But I mean, with this such decision, how can it further affect the currency, Egyptian pounds, in front of the dollars that has been, increasing?
Well, these things will come back with confidence in the economy. If you have no confidence in the economy, people take their money and run as fast as possible away from it. You don't want that. So if you start putting currency restrictions, you make people very insecure about investing in a particular region. So it's got to be open. It's got to be. There has to be free trade in this respect. I want to talk
about the dollar a little bit again as a U.S. currency, as an international currency, and one that is used very heavily here in Egypt. Do you believe, as some analysts say, that we are expecting the pound to be against $10 by the end of this month, or at the beginning of 2016, and that the central bank cannot, back the dollar anymore against the Egyptian pound? Or are these just speculations?
Well, no, there are two schools of thought about this, by the way. There's a school of thought that says basically let it rise to whatever the market will bear. But it has to be open and
but wouldn't that mean that everything else
is going to
rise automatically?
Even if it goes up to 10. Well, up to a point, because at some point there are people who can't pay that. So the prices have to, the value, not necessarily the prices, the value has to stabilize. But that only happens when you have confidence in the economy. If you put artificial restrictions on the currency, you basically promote a lack of confidence in the economy. And this is actually the dilemma the central bank is facing.
Yes, absolutely. Let's move to the regional regional news and international newspapers. World Bulletin and Jewish settlers converge on Al-Aqsa Mosque complex. Extremist Jewish groups call on followers to mark Hanukkah holiday, if I pronounce that right, by converging on Flashpoint Mosque compound. And scores of Jewish settlers and Israeli soldiers on Thursday have forced their way into the occupied East Jerusalem's Flashpoint Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, following the calls by these Jewish extremist groups. The continuation and the spark between Palestinians and very extreme Jewish settlers around or regarding Al-Aqsa complex has, has been on the rise during the past few months. And while that is happening or escalating, nothing else is taking place, and rather being very stalled regarding the peace process. How do you see the Palestinian-Israeli conflict today?
I think the situation is extremely dangerous. If these people wish to visit them in an orderly fashion, because after all there are Jewish sites which are important, the Wailing Wall, which is one, which is within proximity of the Aqsa Mosque. That's one thing.
Yes.
But we're talking in legal terms, we're on very thin ice here, because that part of Jerusalem, whatever the Israelis may say, is part of an occupied territory as addressed to and as accepted by the United Nations. You'll have foreign embassies are not open in Jerusalem, they're open in Tel Aviv.
Yes.
The Americans have shifted to Jerusalem for other reasons, political reasons really, but they're certainly not, it's not international law. International law says you can't fiddle with sites in occupied territory, and it is occupied.
But when it comes to Israel, they're beyond any kind of
up to a point.
law.
That's only because they've not really been challenged. I have not really seen any proper Arab démarche or efforts in terms of the law through the Hague Convention, through a variety of legal, in fact, this is nothing new, by the way. This was suggested that the Arab League pursued this back in the 1950s. But certainly there is legal redress in international courts. And this should be addressed, should be pursued energetically, I might add, by the Palestinians and